Welcome to this module on grief and bereavement. This module is designed to provide you with useful information so that you can help next of kin who are suffering from the loss of a loved one. The module will define grief and bereavement, provide guidance on handling reactions to the notification, explain the stages of grief and bereavement, and discuss how you can support survivors. In this module, you'll hear from survivors who'll talk about their personal experiences after losing a loved one, from CACOs, casualty section personnel, and other experts. Your presence will offer critical support to the next of kin. It's important to understand the distinction between grief and bereavement. Grief is how we react to the loss of a loved one. Bereavement is the long-term process of adapting emotionally and cognitively to the loss or absence of a loved one. As the CACO, you will first confront the initial grief process, how loved ones react to the notification. As you work with the family over weeks or even months, you will encounter the various aspects of the bereavement process. The grieving process begins with the reaction to the notification. As you'll see in the video, upon hearing of the sudden death of a loved one, the next of kin may display a wide range of reactions: shock, disbelief, confusion, numbness, anger, guilt, and even panic. You can expect any combination of these reactions. With each reaction, it is important that you acknowledge the survivor's grief, remain calm and ensure a safe environment, stay focused on the facts, and use physical contact very sparingly.
On February 9th, 1991, I was shot down, captured by the Iraqis, and transported to a prison in Baghdad, where I spent the next 26 days.
So what I remember most from that day is that you can be living a completely normal, everyday life, even if your husband is in combat, and in a moment, that can change when someone knocks on your door.
I went completely numb. It's pretty foggy, the first few moments, because as soon as I saw the van, I just lost all feeling.
And she goes, "I just talked to him, so you have the wrong house." I said, "Can we step inside?" And she goes, "No, you may not. You have the wrong house."
And I remember when they came in, they said immediately, because I just said, "Oh my gosh, oh my gosh, oh my gosh." And they said, "It's not the worst. It's not the worst."
You know, he was fine until the time that I said the words that I needed to say to him. But he took it, and I believe he knew that he had to be the strong one. And he took it like any other parent, though, would.
And truly, every emotion known to man is there. Sometimes they're present all together. Anger, frustration, despondency.
There was a lot of confusion. There was anger. I mean, flat out anger from some family members.
They're going to say things and do things. They're going to lash out because you represent the Marine Corps.
They're not yelling and they're not angry at me. They're yelling and they're angry at the situation, and they've lost their loved one.
Don't take it personal. Be a professional. Understand that truly it is an honor for you to do this for the Marine Corps and for that family. But remember, it's a very emotional for both sides.
She saw me in my blues, and she immediately looked at him and said, "No, tell me no." And he said, "I'm sorry." And she hit him. And then she hugged him and cried. And after about 5 minutes, she looked at him again and hit him, and then hugged him again and cried. And that lasted a good 15 minutes. And they all cried together. It was a very tough time because they all knew each other and been with each other for some time.
And then everything just went silent. And she stopped screaming, she stopped crying, and she just, this blank stare, it's like a 1,000-yard stare. She just looked at you. And then, she put her hand out, held on to mine, she squeezed it, and then she started sobbing quietly. And I just held her hand. Nobody said a word, which again seemed like for hours.
I don't even know. I don't know if it was 5 minutes, 10 minutes. I have no idea. But I remember at some point knowing, like, I was supposed to look up, like, that they had to, they had to talk to me.
We have to be patient and allow the individuals to process that, to grieve a little bit.
Once I calmed down and they sat me down, they said, your husband went out on a mission and his plane didn't come back, but a chute was sighted in the area, and so we're, doing everything we can to find out more information.
I knew the United States Marine Corps would assign a CACO. I knew the United States Marine Corps would take care of my family. That was a comfort and something that I clung to and that I relied on, just to kind of get me through day in and day out.
Be prepared, because they're still distraught. There's a lot of emotional pain. They may be asking the questions, but they're not retaining the answers.
We end up trying to fill that void, and we can say things that aren't very effective for the situation. Preference
would probably be that you're not emotional, because your body language, what you say, how you say it, sometimes may be misinterpreted.
I think platitudes aren't really good for families when you're notifying. Sometimes it's just best to provide the information they need and not feel the need to say anything beyond that.
If that family is purely, they're very pragmatic, they just want to know, tell me the facts, what are the benefits, how do I get from point A to point B, then, you need to tailor your services, tailor your relationship in that manner.
As you get closer to the person that you're helping, you realize that it can't all be about just being professional.
Yeah, that's something that you're really not taught in the Marine Corps, to be compassionate, and you obviously have to show a sense of compassion when you sit down with the next of kin, not only during the notification, but through all aspects and phases of the CACO duties.
The next video will focus on the long-term grief and bereavement process. As the CACO, you will be interacting with the next of kin as he or she experiences various stages in the long-term bereavement process. In general, this process has a beginning, a middle, and a resolution. The beginning is the initial reaction to the death. As you have learned, these reactions can vary greatly. The second stage includes the next of kin's attempt to work through their grief. For most people, this stage eventually transitions into recovery, healing, and acceptance of the death. But this does not often begin until at least 1 year after the death, if at all.
Soon as you're notified, you just lose everything. I'd been on my own for almost 10 years, being married to him. I was a veteran at deployments and being a single mom and taking care of myself. And then all of a sudden, I didn't know what I was doing, where I was going. I was throwing up because just the anxiety.
It's things like that it's tough for people to understand, that in that moment, like, your whole life is just destroyed. Like, your identity is suddenly, this isn't something you feel on the first day, but through the process, your identities, you start to question who you are.
I was being told my husband was going to die, and I tried to imagine in my head how bad that was going to be. We were married for 18 years and had 4 children, but even in my imagination, it was so much worse than I could imagine.
And I remember the first time driving to work, and the path I had to go to work, I drove by the flagpole, and they were raising the flag in the morning, and it was something you never think is going to bother you, but in that moment, it was just so painful, and it's just different things, have greater significance now.
In my own experience and what I've experienced through other families, it's a post-traumatic stress. It's reliving it over and over again. And it's what you go to bed with at night, it's what you wake up in the morning. My first thought every morning when I woke up is my husband's dead. And I'd relive the moments leading up to it.
I just like, there's some days I just couldn't do it. I just felt exhausted and just completely defeated and drained. And, you know, I almost think the first year I walked through was very foggy.
Nobody grieves the same. Nobody. I didn't grieve the same as my children. My friends don't grieve the same as me.
I'm a wreck. Carolyn's a wreck. And we go from, weeping like children to laughing uproariously. Because that's what happens, when people are telling stories.
I think the way I took care of myself initially was we just had some practical things we had to take care of. So we decided to go ahead and face those head on and think about them. And then I tried to pour myself into helping with planning the service.
I guess my Marine wife training went into play for me, and I thought, okay, what's the next thing I need to do?
So in a way, I almost want to say she was more focused than you would think possible. And I almost think it was her way of coping, is that I can't think about that right now. I have to do this. I have to make sure these things are taken care of.
When I went back to work, I could be off in my little work cubicle, and just silently let go. But I decided early on, I forgive myself. This happens. This is just, I don't want to be that guy, but I am that guy.
I mean, I went back to work while Russell was missing because for me it was important to do the next thing, to keep my life as normal as possible. Now that's me. Somebody else may have felt the need to go home.
But you do have to go through the pain to get to the other side. And it's just so true. The best way to get through the grief is to grieve. As difficult as it is. But you also need the breaks. You need to laugh.
It could be different a minute from now. You could be laughing, you could be crying, but every minute, every month, every year, it's going to be different. It's going to be just ups and downs.
There's definitely days where it's like, I just have to tell myself to breathe. And I know some people may look at it as like, well, it's 2 years, but 2 years, it feels like I blinked my eyes and 2 years went by.
Just when you think, you made some progress and then she goes back to that moment where she initially found out her husband passed away. I think that was the hardest moment for me, thinking, how do I help her out? What can I do to make this easier for her?
And I would find myself just sitting sometimes for 3 or 4 hours would have gone by. And I wouldn't have moved from one spot. And, would go days without eating. When you're not going to work and the kids are not being cared for, or you're not feeding them, or you're not taking care of yourself, that's when it's a problem and someone needs to step in and say, I can see this is a little bit more than you can manage right now.
They're having mood changes. They're talking about death quite a bit. They're abusing alcohol and drugs. They're giving away possessions. Those are all warning signs that are associated with suicide.
I've had phone calls where I was speaking to a mom, and it was evident that she was in need of assistance, immediate assistance. And so after talking to her and trying to keep her on the phone as long as possible, we were able to make outreach to an organization that got her help to the house immediately.
I'm not a professional psychiatrist, so you point them in that direction so that way they can seek that help if they do want that.
And I didn't know how badly I needed that until I actually went. And it takes a lot of courage. It really does. It takes a lot for someone to appear somewhere where everybody else is going to be grieving, or to seek out a counselor or whatever, whatever the venue may be for reaching out for some support. I've worked with bereavement for over 8 years now and facilitated support groups, and nobody likes to hear how you do, and they get upset about that. I think just rephrase it, I thought about you today. You're in my heart. I'm thinking of you. I imagine this must be awful for you, but anything else except how are you doing? Because everyone will say, I'm fine, I'm doing okay, hanging in there.
Everybody grieves differently, and I think that's something that's going to be hard for future CACOs too, is that nobody's the same, and you can't prepare for it. You don't know how you're going to grieve.
One thing that I would always is to be in touch with your own grief, to know what in your own life, what you've been through, and use that as your experience. That, it's okay to say, I'm sorry that this happened.
The best advice I could give them is to show that you feel their pain, that you understand that it hurts and it hurts you too. If you feel the grief, don't be afraid to show it.
And if you don't know what to say, then you can say that. I don't have any words for you, but just know that I care. For children, I would take my lead from them, talk to them like a regular kid. I know with my own experience, my kids and many people that I've talked with, they don't want to be the kid that their dad died or their brother died, or, because that makes them stand out and be different. But take them aside and say, did you catch the game? Or meet them where they're at. Talk with them about something they enjoy talking about. And then see if they bring it up, don't shy away from their questions. Because kids don't grieve the same way. They don't have the brain power. They don't grieve the same way adults do.
I couldn't appreciate then how young I was, but I had so little life experience to deal with that. But I really relied on my faith. I relied on my friends.
I try to be as positive through it as I possibly can, only because my husband was very upbeat, loved life. Just had this incredible passion for life and very easygoing, really laid back, one of the most genuine people you would ever meet. And I just, I choose to live my life in a way that honors him and to be the person that he loved.
I could just imagine, and I would imagine him saying to me, what are you doing? Enough. Get up off that couch and go out and live life. That's what he would have wanted. I know that. And I would hear his voice telling me that.
I do still grieve. I have those moments where I get tearful, but I don't wallow in my grief.
It's absolutely horrible, and it's not time that helps it. It's what you do at that time. It's facing the grief, looking at it, staring it down, facing it every day.
It doesn't keep me down. As Ryan said, be strong. I am strong.
And you come to the other side. The spirit in people is just so amazing.
As the CACO, your strength, support, and active presence can help the next of kin as they strive to work through the healing process towards recovery. As you've seen in this video, no one can go through the grieving process for the next of kin, but you can help in a number of ways. You provide your undivided attention for however long it takes to assist the next of kin. You offer strength and reassurance. You provide next of kin with resources and connections to information. You help them prepare for the grieving rituals, such as the funeral. You offer essential post-funeral assistance by being diligent, caring, and dependable. You do what you say you will do, and you follow through. If you can achieve these goals, you will be able to truly demonstrate the values of the Marine Corps, never leaving a fallen Marine behind, and never abandoning the families of those who have made the ultimate sacrifice for our nation.